Greetings everyone, once again it's Motamwani sharing the authentic truth brought to us by Zulula San. So here the teaching I will give, that I will share, is going to be regarding the angels, that the angels are black according to the Bible. For this teaching, I will go first in the current classical day Bible, and then I will go in Bibèl, the only authentic Bible without any errors and contradictions. Because we know there are so-called Christians out there that have tried to represent the angels. Even when you go in the Vatican and so on, they have murals, they have painting, they have representations of angels, and the way they describe them, the way they show them, they represent them, is not according to the scriptures, is not even according to their own Bible that they present, that they've said that according to them is the truth. So we shall go into those Bible and see exactly what is the representation, and does it match what they are showing to people. And for that, before I go into current classical day Bible, we have to understand that in Proverbs chapter 19 verse 2, it says in Bibèl, the only authentic Bible, and that I've translated here in English, the lack of knowledge is not good for any spirit of man of the original race, and he who rushes in his step fall into sin. So the lack of knowledge, the lack of science, the lack of spiritual knowledge is not good for a person. It's not good for a black person. So you out there who are still unaware that the angels were black, that knowledge is going to be shared here to you. It's going to be presented. So no longer be in the darkness, no longer be in the lie or in the blindness, or no longer blindly follow those who claim. And here that knowledge is going to be revealed. In Joki Sabe, so the true Christ, Kundumani Mula, chapter 29, it says, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free men. So this is part of the truth. This is part of the truth that we are sharing, because when we talk about the angels, when we talk about spiritual beings, the entities, those are things beyond the visible reality. And when you know that truth, it is that truth that will make you free. And it's the truth that we are sharing here. And the truth is brought to us by Zulula San, the only teacher. Because many people have tried to represent the angels, but they did not see the angels. The people who make drawings and so on, when you type on Google, Yahoo, Wikipedia, you type angels, you see a picture. That person who has represented that picture didn't see that angel. So what is he basing his that image of? Was it based on the scriptures, or was it based on his own idea of things? That's the question. But we have to go back to the source, and we know that the source is Zulula San, and is the verb of loba. And we have a support of the prophets who have seen the angels, who have seen the spiritual entities, and they've described what they have seen, and the truth is revealed to us here without any errors or contradiction. And they've taken the history, those texts, those ancient African texts, the copies, and they've made the current classical day Bible. But they've removed the names, the places of birth, they've changed many things, they added contradictions, and they've also tried to change the description, the representation of those angels. But nevertheless, they did not remove everything, because there's still the trace, there's still that trace of the description of the angel, even in the current classical day Bible. And it is those traces that they did not remove, that they could not remove, that we are going to see, and we're going to extirpate, and we're going to reveal. So for those who claim to be Christian, who claim to be believer, and are still representing or still thinking that the angels are white, or maybe they look like white people and so on, we're going to see if that belief is based on the scriptures or not. The opinion of people or so on, that has no weight in the spiritual sense. We have to see if it's based on the truth. So, for that, in the current Classical Day Bible, in Revelation chapter 1, verse 14, in New International Version, it says this: the hair of his head was white like wool, comma. So here, who is, because in current Classical Day Bible, in Revelation 1:14, it is John. And John, who did he see? That is not the Christ. If you go in Revelation 1:1, it says, the revelation from Christ, which, this is according to the current Classical Day Bible, which God gave him to show his servant what must soon take place. Period. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John. So, according to the current Classical Day Bible, that God gave the revelation and to that Christ, and that Christ gave that revelation was sending that revelation to John, but he did not send it directly. He sent his angel to reveal that to John. And it is that angel that John saw in Revelation 1:14. So for all those out there who will claim that the person or the angel that John saw is not an angel, or is that is the Christ, it is not the Christ, because the Christ sent his angel to John, and that's who John saw according to the current Classical Day Bible. So now that is clear that it is an angel, now the angel appeared to him, and it was through a vision. And when John turned to see who was speaking to him, he then gave the description of what he saw in the spiritual through his vision. The hair of his head was white like wool. White like wool. So people are going to stop here and going to think that it's only about the color. It's not only about the color, because in the next verse it says, as white as snow. So you have to understand here that when he says it was like wool, that's also the description of the hair themselves. So what is wool? When you search about wool, sheep wool type, and you will see what does it look like. It's curly. It is curly hair, or also known as frizzy hair. So curly hair is an afro. So that angel that John saw had an afro, and that afro was white. That's what it says. His head was white like wool. So it's white and like wool. So it's both. It was white and it was like wool, and it was white as the snow. Now, that is the description. Why is that description not what is shown in the Vatican and so on, in even the so-called Jehovah's Witness, when they try to depict the angels? Do they depict them with an afro? Do they depict them black? No, because they're trying to lie. They're trying to usurpate and try to falsify, to try to make people believe in the lie, because they themselves, what did they witness? They witness nothing. Did they saw those angels that they are representing? No. Are the angels that they're representing based on the scriptures, on the truth? No. So here, according to the current Classical Day Bible, the hair on his head was white like wool, and like I've mentioned, wool type you will see. Do not simply read and then move on and then don't research what is wool. Research, see for yourself, type, see what is wool, and you will see that it's an afro, it's curly. That's the sheep's. You see the sheep's when they have so much hair, and they even have to cut it. How's the hair? The hair are not, because there's wool that is treated. When it's treated, that's when it becomes long. But before it's being treated, when it's like wool itself, it's like an afro, it's curly. So curly hair. And it's white as well, because we know even in Africa, in ancient Africa, when you have, for example, the elders, when they're old, for example, and they have an afro, it's curly and it's white, right? So that's what it was like. And that's that representation, that's the description of the hair and the head of that angel that John saw in Revelation 1:14. So that is the features of a black person. So the spiritual race, the race of that angel, it was black. Now, when we go in verse 15, it says this in the New Living Translation: his feet were like polished bronze, refined in the furnace, comma. So the feet were like polished bronze. What is polished bronze? Because it says polished bronze refined in a furnace. We are going to stop. We're going to see. We're going to describe what exactly it is. It says polished, something that has been polished bronze. What is bronze? Bronze is like a metal. It's a metal. And which color does that metal has? That bronze has that, or it's brown, correct? So that bronze is brown. Type, research, Google, and so on. It's brown. It's of a brownish color. But it does not stop here. It says refined brown. So you refine it, you purify it, and so on. So it glows. It's pure. It's nice. It looks. It has a gleam. It shines. It's polished. It's beautiful. But it says polished bronze refined in a furnace. So it's not refining it. It's refined in a furnace, like polished bronze refined in a furnace. Now, if you have the polished bronze refined in a furnace, that means when you take the bronze, you put it in a furnace, and then you take it out. What does it look like? Because the bronze, when you put it in a furnace, it glows, it gleams, it becomes red. People are going to stop there. They're going to say, yes, so it's red. No, that's not what it says here. It says refined. There's a E and a D. For those of you who don't know, and you shall go to school, you should go to school, learn that. And refined, that is in the past tense. It's something that has been refined in the past. So it's not something that is being refined. No. It's not refining. No. It's refined in the past. In the furnace. So something that has been in the furnace, that is no longer in the furnace, what is it? So that bronze that has been put in the furnace in the past, and then now is refined, when it's in the furnace, before it goes in the furnace is brown, right? That's the bronze. You put it in the furnace, it glows, it becomes red. Now you take it out of the furnace, what does it look like? It then becomes black. And that's the color, that's what the feet of that angel was like. In the New American Standard Bible, it says this: his feet were like burnished bronze. So now it's no longer polished, it's burnished bronze, when he has been heated to a glow in the furnace. Right? So when he has been, so when he has been, that's the past. So that's already has been done. You see, it doesn't say here when it is refined in the furnace. No, it says when it has been refined in the furnace. That means it's something that's already past. That's something that it's already been done. So if it already been done, refined in the furnace, that means it's no longer in that state. It's now black. Berean literal Bible. And his feet are like fine bronze, as having been refined in a furnace. So all those, it's in the past tense. You take bronze that is brown, you put it in the furnace, it glows, it becomes red, you purify it, you burn it, and then what does it look like after? It's black. And that was the color of that angel. That was the color of that entity that John saw in Revelation 1:14 and 15. So that's the proof that even according to the current classical day Bible, that that the angels are black. So any representations of the angels that is not conform to the scriptures are wrong. That are not conform to that are false. First of all, you who are drawing those type of pictures, did you see that angel? No. But we know that the prophet did see them, and they are the one who have written, and we have the authentic Bible of their text, and it's in Bibèl Kalatambale, the book of the truth. And it is from the copy of those texts of the story that many people have heard and copied and translated, that they've come up with the current classical day Bible that you have, and they added lies, changed the names, and so on, and they falsified, but they are still trace. And when you see in those trace, it tells you the true descriptions, part of it. So those descriptions, those in the so-called Vatican, that's not what they represent. You see, because they're trying to hide it, they're trying to lie to people. So you are there, the angels were black, even according to the current classical day Bible. We know in John, in the current classical day Bible 3 verse 12, he says this: I have spoken to you of earthly things, and you do not believe, semicolon. How then will you believe if I speak of heavenly things? Question mark. So, when we, for example, when we talk, because when we share the authentic truth about the Christ, about black people history, about the prophets, that they were black, that the first man was black, that even the scientists, they know, they say that that's where mankind come from Africa, from ancient Africa. That's where life, that's where the first man, the first civilization, and so on. So if that's the truth, if that's where it comes from, then those people were black. The first people on earth were black. And that's scientifically accurate. That's historically accurate. And spiritually, and also according to the scriptures, that's also accurate. But many people don't believe when there's even proof. When we tell them about the prophet and so on, they don't believe. And now, when we're going to tell them then that the angels are black, they're going to say, well, what are you saying? Because, you see, it's beyond anything they can imagine. It's about spiritual things that they cannot see. So that's why we are sharing the basis as well. And if you don't believe the basis, if you think that the colors of the prophet or the color of the Christ is not important, well, that means you're not believing in the truth. You're denying the truth. And if you're denying the truth, that means you are in the lie. You've accepted the lie. You are in confusion. Because some people will say, no, the color of the Christ doesn't matter, it's not important, and all that matters is just peace and love, and that's it. Because they are spiritually blinded, they don't even understand things. They are afraid to ask questions. They are afraid to know things. They are afraid to question things. The truth is not afraid. The truth is not afraid of arguments, of other people type of arguments. No, because the truth, if it's the truth, that means there's proof. It's based on something. It's when, for example, we mentioned regarding that black people were the first people on earth. Well, you go back in history, you can see that that's the truth. There's trace. The creation itself, the universe itself, the nature itself testify that that's the truth. Because when you see a black person, naturally, on earth, he's at home. But the other races, for example, a white person, for example, goes to the sun, he goes, for example, on the beach. The sun is not even going to agree with him because that white person is going to have sunburn and so on. You see? Because it's not compatible with the environment. But a black person everywhere he is compatible because he was made for that environment. So that is undeniable. So when because there's a physical body, when we talk about black people, there's a physical body, and there's also what is known as a spiritual body. For that, we go in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 44. It says, if there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. So that's according to the Current Classical Bible. Amplified Bible. It is sown a natural body, mortal, suited to earth. It is raised a spiritual body, immortal, suited to heaven. As surely there is a physical body, there's also a spiritual body. So there's a physical body and there's also a spiritual one. When John sees the angel, the entity, he sees through a vision in the spiritual. You see? And then he describes what he sees. Because for some people, they're going to say, no, in the spiritual, you cannot say that it was black or that the angels are black because it's not, for them, it doesn't have a description. Or for them, that the notion of color does not exist in the spiritual, or the notion of spiritual body doesn't exist for them, but it does, and that's biblical. Those spiritual bodies have different glow, have different brightness, have different beam. And here we shall see for Daniel. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 9, it says, as I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool, period. So here, the Ancient of Days, it's the true Christ. He is the Christ. And according to the Current Classical Bible, that's not that is not the Father himself. That is the Christ. And he says that his clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head was white like wool. So white like wool, once again, is the same description as the angel in Revelation 1:14, and that's the Christ himself. And the description of the Christ is also having hair like wool. So the hair like wool, it's also curly hair, or also known as frizzy hair. So an afro. And you see that the so-called Christian and other form of belief that based their knowledge on the Bible, they will represent the Christ, but they will not represent him with afro hair. or as a black man. They'll try to represent him other form of ways, with long hair, like a woman, and so on. Fake images. And many people fall victim of those fake representations. And that affect the way they see themselves, the way they view themselves. Because many people are going to think, okay, the Christ is white. Many people are going to think that the prophets were white, that Adam and Eve were white. And then they're going to grow up in it. And then they're going to start hating themselves because they're going to think, what is their place? If their savior is white, their so-called God is white, everything for them is white, they're gonna start to think, well, what is their place in all of that? And many black people are in that state where they hate themselves, or they don't like their parents. They're trying to be white. They're trying to uncurl their hair. They're trying to bleach their skin. They're trying to look like their so-called fake savior Jesus. And that is spiritual alienation, because those are lies that has been told to many through the generations. And those lies and those representations are not according to the scriptures, are not according to the truth, are not historically accurate. And when you see, for example, in many churches, even so-called black churches, you will see many women, they have fake hair on their head because they no longer appreciate their natural hair, their natural beauty. And they're going to say no, that Jesus saved them. What did he save you from when you are still wearing those fake hair? When many of them still hate themselves, many of them still bleach their skin, many of them trying to be white, trying to act white. You see? Because behind that, it's a plan. It was a plan to destroy the image of the black woman, and the plan to falsify the history of black people, to try to change so that you believe that you have no place even in the spiritual, because they will then try to represent the angels as white. They'll try to make representation of the paradise. Everybody is white, wearing jeans and so on. And many people are going to believe that. Many people are going to put pictures of that fake Jesus in their room. And that is a lie. Black people out there, you have to wake up. You have to wake up from the lies, from the falsification of history. You have to come back to the source. According to the Bible, to the scriptures, to what you believe, even the current classical day Bible, the angels are black. The prophets were black. Even the description of the Christ, because the way they're going to show him, they're going to represent him, that's not, where is that description in the Bible? It is not. But the description can be found in Daniel chapter 7 verse 9. And his hair was white like wool. So like an afro, curly hair. And that's the Ancient of Days. And that's in the spiritual. And in the spiritual, you're told that the angels, even when John has the vision, the angels that appeared to him, he gave the description. And the description, his feet, they were black. It was black. And his hair, like wool. And that's the truth. So, Don't no longer be victim of those fake images, fake representations, the lies. Because we know they've tried to falsify black people history where they could, where they can, where they could. They've tried to. When even recently, when you search, every time a black person tried to do something, accomplish something, they'll try to falsify his history, try to hide it, try to make it as it never happened. It happened over time, across multiple generations. When they've tried to say no, black people didn't have a history, or they didn't have civilization, they didn't know how to write, they didn't know how to mathematics, and so on, science. You see, they try to basically put black people down and try to make themselves look important, as if they know everything. But the truth is being restored here. No longer accept those lies. Those lies. So, and we know, even according to the current classical day Bible, that in Genesis 1:6, it says, this is according to the current classical day Bible, it says, let us make mankind in our images, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the bird in the sky. So here it says, let us make mankind. So who is let us? So does that mean there's many creators? There's many people who created? Because in Matthew, according to the current classical day Bible, in Matthew chapter 19, verse 4, it says, the Christ answered, don't you know in the beginning the Creator made a man and a woman? ? So here it says that the Creator made a man and a woman. Not we made, not they made. No, the Creator made. So the versions that will say let us, as if it was many people, as if it is not one Creator, all those versions are wrong. But we know that the truth has been restored, or support is here. It's Bibèl, the Kalatambale, the authentic Bible without any errors and contradictions. But nevertheless, here it says, in our likeness. And what is that likeness? What is that likeness? What is that image? Because the image, the likeness, the spiritual entities that are described even in the current classical day Bible, they're represented as black. They're represented as having black features. So it makes sense that the first man was black as well, because it was made from the same likeness, from the same source, from the same spiritual DNA. So in Hebrew chapter 1 verse 7, it says, Hebrew chapter 1 verse 7, in speaking of the angel, he says he makes his angels spirit and his servants flames of fire. So the angels are spirits, and those spirits, we know that they have a spiritual body. They have spiritual, as it was mentioned in 1 Corinthians 15 verse 44. There's also a spiritual body. Now, we've shown the description of the angel that John saw in Revelation. We've shown the description of the Christ in Daniel 7:9. And now we will see of the four living creatures in Ezekiel chapter 1, starting in verse 4. He says, I looked and I saw a whirlwind coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing back and forth and brilliant light all around it, period. In the center of the fire was a gleam like amber, and within it was the form of four living creatures, and this was their appearance, colon. They had a human form. Verse 6, but each had 4 faces and 4 wings. Verse 7, their legs were straight, and the sole of their feet were like hooves of a calf, gleaming like polished bronze. So once again, the polished bronze is appearing here. And the polished bronze is brown. So those 4 living creatures, and when you go in New International Version, it says, and gleam like burnished bronze. So burnished is black, because something you burn in the past, the bronze, if you burn it in the past, what does it become like? Something that has been burned. It's then black. And you see that in New Living Translation, burnished bronze. English Standard Version, burnished. Berean Study Bible, polished bronze. And King James Bible, burnished brass. Now, for those of you who don't know, type brass, type bronze, you will see the color of that metal. And you'll see that it's brown. It is of a brownish color. And if you burn that, so if you burn it, it becomes what? It becomes black. It becomes dark. Now, no longer be victims of those fake images, of those lies. They've tried to falsify black people's history, and many people have fallen into that trap. Many people have accepted the lies. And because many people at a certain period in time, they didn't even know how to read, they didn't even know how to research, many people didn't have access to that information. But now there is that information. You can research, you can Google, you can read books, you can find and research on bronze, research on wool, research on the origin of those texts. And you will see that the text, the current classical Bible, those are copies, translations. There's many versions, and they came from ancient texts from Africa that they've changed the names, the places of birth, and so on. And they've tried to falsify, they've tried to erase the trace that it was black people. But they couldn't erase everything, because those clues are still there. And we are taking those clues for those who still accept those Bible. And Zulu Lassam, who is the only teacher, has revealed to us. And I've revealed to us the truth, the true history. And we have the support as well, Bibèl. And for that, when we go in Revelation 1 verse 16, he says, this is regarding then in Revelation, so that's Baby Sedi, Lakisabe, who is known as John. He saw that entity. In verse 16, he says, I turned to find out which voice was speaking to me, period. And after I turned around, I saw 7 gold candlesticks. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, a man of our black race, clothed in linen and having a gold belt on his breast. So here in Bibèl, it is with precision that he was a man of our black race. So that man was black. And that's what they've tried to erase. That's what they've tried to falsify. And In verse 18, he says, the hair of his head was curly. So curly hair, also known as frizzy hair, so that's an afro. His eyes were like a fiery flame of fire. So he had curly hair, so those hair, and it's with precision, he says, of a black man. A man of our black race. His eyes were like a fiery flame of fire. So that's the true description, that's the true representation that Lakisabe saw. And when you go in Esombe, who's known in the current classical day Bible as Paul, in Esombe chapter 26, verse 21, he says, neither do all visible living beings have the same body. Men have their own body and nature. Animals have another. Birds yet another. And fish also another. Verse 22. There are also heavenly bodies and earthly bodies. Semicolon. But another is the shine of the heavenly bodies, another that of the terrestrial bodies. Verse 23. Another is the shine of the sun, another the shine of the mysterious moon, and another the shine of the stars. Even as stars, in bracket, as well as entities, differs in brightness from another stars, in bracket, entity. So the entities have different shine. But having different shine doesn't mean that they are of different race. No. Because they have spiritual DNA common spiritual DNA. And it is from that source, from that spiritual DNA, that the first man was also formed. And that's why in this current classical the Bible says, let us make mankind in our likeness. But in Bibèl, he says in Bebote so Origin chapter 1 verse 26, he says, the manifestation of the will of Loba then continued to declare by means of his word to create a being in the seven manifestation of the visible and of the invisible and visible nature, similar to the being's life from beyond the non-visible great veil, which would have the capacity to experience the visible condition. This being, spirit of man, had to be able to have support in order to live this condition of visible in his conscious state, a link between the spirit and the body. He would be the only visible being to be able to see himself, the entities of the great order of things, by living consciously and freely in the midst of their presence when they appear in the visible dimension of the link, soul and visible dimension, physical body, semi-astral. And nature, life, spiritual DNA common to all non-living being, manifested by the luminous intensity of the radiation of the inner image of spiritual being issuing from beyond the non-visible great veil, must be in direct contact by the interposition of the semi-spiritual and semi-visible opaque mass, soul. Thus, the union of this fusion will give the manifestation of the inner image, life, of spiritual being issuing from beyond the non-visible great veil, which will have the same inner nature life. And the skin of this physical being will have the appearance of the color of darkness, black, manifested from the union of reflected shadow of spiritual being beyond the non-visible great veil. Period. So that's the truth. That's Karatampali. And you're told that the nature, life, spiritual DNA common to all non-visible being. So that's the DNA that is shared, that the angels, what is known as the angels, the gray, the entities. And it is from that DNA that was also, that the first man was also made of. So that's why when the entities appear, we see a black man. And when I say we see, I'm referring to the prophets, and I'm referring to those who bear witness, who received that vision. And Zululasam gave us the revelation and the truth. Brought us the truth. So that the first man was black, the angels were black because they had the same DNA, spiritual DNA. And so all those fake images that they will represent are not accurate, are not based on the scriptures. So that was the teaching. The angels are black, even according to the current classical Bible. And we've given the verses. Anybody that disagree, that will say, what are you saying, and so on, is because you are in a lie. You're living in a fabricated invention, in confusion. All glory to Loba, the only and unique creator.